The Teen Talent Contest was to be held at a popular Hull nightclub called Tiffany's, or Tiffs if you will, 'cause there was always one going on in there. The show had been put together by a local impresario, booker and compere, called Benny Getz, who usually went out together with his backing band, Benny and the Getz. To say Benny fancied himself was an understatement. The night I met him, he had his shirt open to his waist with a large medallion and was smoking menthol cigarettes, 'cause he thought they made him look minted, although in his condition he looked anything but mint. He spent so much time running in and out of the toilets that night that we ended up giving him a nickname, Benny Spend a Penny, although Les reckoned that spending a penny was the last thing Benny was doing, especially being as tight as he was. I remember Les saying, "I had no idea incontinence had such an irritating effect on your nose." So anyway, there were 5 acts in each half, and to this day I can remember every one of them. I was on in the second half, backed by my brothers, who between them had put together a routine for me. But before all of that, we had to put up with Benny's warm-up, which was always successful apparently, 'cause by the time he'd finished, the audience were desperate for anybody to come on and take over. He could make the least talented individual look good. Benny started things off with the Getz backing him on the song Young Girl, a bad choice according to Les, before doing what he always did, which was tell a load of jokes that fell flat, so that he could fall back on his catchphrase, which was to ask a woman in the front row if they got it, "Do you get it?" before turning to their husbands or boyfriends, "Does she get it?" And that was it, the entire warm-up. I mean, I didn't get it either. Next, he introduced the judges, who consisted of the entertainment editor from the Hull Daily Mail, who was anything but entertaining, and a dancer friend of Benny's called Exotic Eve, who, according to the lads, had a very large snake called Temptation. Eve had a speaking voice that sounded like Eartha Kitt, but with a Hull accent, and the lads reckoned Eve was only on the bill 'cause they were a close friend of Benny's, and that Eartha Kitt was a good way of describing Eve's act. Each of the acts would then come on, answer a few questions with Benny, say a bit about themselves, and then perform their turn for the audience. First off was a kid who said he was part Jamaican and went to Kingston. He was dressed in a karate outfit and set about showing his moves with a load of bricks and boards, whilst the Getz played kung fu fighting behind him. The only problem was he didn't manage to break anything, so it all went a bit wrong. At the end, Benny, who we knew couldn't tell a joke but was very quick with a put-down, said, "Well, it's a good job he's got his pyjamas on, ain't it? 'Cause he'll be going home early." Brutal, but true, sadly. Next was a kid who came on with his shirt off and said he was a muscle dancer. He said his favourite subject was physics, which he studied at Kelvin, which even with the little bit I knew would have meant he should at least have understood something about movement. But 'cause he lacked definition, and when he got going to the tune of Wheels, a favourite of mine, it didn't look like how it was happening. He just ended up raising his arms here and there and turning round every so often. Benny said, "I think we've just been watching someone reenact a recent doctor's examination," which was a correct diagnosis. Then we were treated to a conjurer called the Great Gansted. He came from Sprotely apparently, but it didn't have the same ring to it, so Gansted it was. And speaking of rings, He had a set of 'em, but 'cause of his nerves, everyone could see there was a gap in them, which he didn't cover up properly. Every trick just fell apart. He kept dropping his disappearing coin. A member of the audience took 2 cards rather than 1, which both turned out to be the same, and his rope failed to stand on end. Benny said, "I think that made everybody's rope fail to stand on end. Can you make yourself disappear, son?" To be fair, you could at least describe Benny's put-down as magical. After that was a lad in glasses who made bird noises, collected American comics, and went to Marvel. I didn't recognise any of the birds, and even though the audience had been encouraging all night, he did lose them a bit with his very monotone delivery. "This is the chaffinch. It goes like this. This is the tony owl. It goes like this. This is the thrush. It goes like this." Once again, Benny came back on and said, "That's the nearest he's going to get to any sort of thrush, isn't it? He likes the birds, doesn't he? But I'd be surprised if they liked him." Then finally, at the end of the first half, there was a juggler and unicyclist from the grammar school. I never understood the name grammar school. I said to Des, "It's odd that. Imagine going to a school that only taught one part of a subject. And why grammar? I mean, in that case, why aren't other schools named after just one part of a subject?" And Des said, "Say something such as the Sydney Smith School of Alliteration." I didn't get it, but then Des knew all about being illiterate. Des also reckoned the kid might have been studying tenses, 'cause that's how everybody felt at the end. Tense. He was a juggler and a unicyclist with a difference. He only juggled one club, and the unicycle was on stabilisers. It was so odd, Benny didn't even bother saying anything. He just brought the half to a close, and was in the toilet before the audience had even got out of their seats. You couldn't see him for dust. It wasn't long before the second half came around, and we reckoned we were in with a real chance. But after a short warm-up by Benny, singing the song "You're 16, it looked like the quality had gone up a bit, starting with a ventriloquist whose dummy looked like it had a lisp. From what I could work out, the dummy, who was dressed as a farmer and called Amoth, and the kid were both from South Cave and went to South Hunsley School, or as Amos put it, South Cave and South Huntley School. It was going quite well for both of them, until they did a song together by Cliff Richard, called "In the Country," whilst drinking a glass of water, which, although it probably wasn't deliberate, he managed to shorten the word country. In an effort to make light of it, Benny came on afterwards and said, "Well, I wouldn't want him putting words in my mouth, let alone shoving his hand up me backside." To be fair, Benny was quite capable of putting words in his own mouth, and as for putting a hand up his backside, as Tez said, I don't think you'll find many people wanting to do that. So much so, Les reckoned he was probably a very safe bet going through customs, and that was part of the reason he was in and out of the toilet all night. For some reason, they'd put all of the girls in the second half, and the 2 girls that came on before us were both very good. The first was a sword swallower who came from Preston, which struck me as not only a long way to come, but also made me wonder whether she should be eligible. Either way, she played on some South Holderness connection or other, to the hilt, and it went really well. Benny, who was slurring his words more and more, came back on and started going on about a film he'd seen called Deep Throat. I didn't know what he was on about, But Tes reckoned that unfortunately for Benny, unlike the girl in the film, his remarks hadn't gone down too well. Next up was a contortionist called Connie, who went really well, so much so I was starting to wonder how we were going to go. Once again, Benny came back on and said something that sounded like it could be out of turn. Lovely girl, that. Bend over backwards for you. And even though some people laughed, I had the feeling that he'd made everyone uncomfortable just before he was going to bring us on. We had nothing to worry about though. We'd worked out a routine that consisted of me doing an easy listening version of School's Out, backed by my brothers with a load of impersonations of teachers in the middle. Ken Goodwin and Frank Spencer as useless teachers, Brian Clough as a strict teacher, the Fonz as a cool teacher, and Steve McGarrett as the head teacher, which mainly involved using catchphrases such as "settle down," "I've had a bit of trouble," "we decide I'm right," "hey," and "book him, Dano." At the end, Benny came back on and said, that was all catchphrases, wasn't it? Before going on to say, "Seems like a nice boy," and casting some sort of aspersion toward me. I was really tempted to point at him and shout out, "Look at the muck in here." But as he was a judge, I thought better of it. So with one act to go, we reckoned we were sitting fairly pretty. The last act was a girl doing a glass orchestra, the glasses having been filled up at the top of the show to save time. Benny managed to say something off colour again when he was introducing her. I don't know how many glasses there are there, but imagine blowing that lot in one night. Followed by him asking one of the women in the front row how many she could blow in one night, as well as the usual "do you get it?" which he'd been saying pretty much with every turn. And as Tes said, it was beginning to suck. Now I don't know much about it, but when they brought the table to the stage, some of the water must have evaporated or got spilt, 'cause somewhere between Leslie's understanding of volume and waveform and Tes's understanding of pitch, they reckoned it was going to be off key. And wasn't it just? It was like a Les Dawson version of the theme to Van der Valk, the sort of way you'd play it, according to Les, if you actually went to Amsterdam. The audience were roaring though, absolutely wetting themselves. But credit to the girl, even though she looked like she was on the verge of tears, she went through with it, and it's a good job she did, 'cause she ended up winning. We came second, with Connie in third place, although Mam reckoned we should have won, and that in talent contests, people are suckers for a sob story. So I said, maybe I should have told them that I don't know who me dad is. But not that sort of sob story, apparently. Anyway, it didn't matter, 'cause at the end, Benny said he'd liked what he'd seen, and said if we sorted out a whole act, he could get us loads of work. You could say what you like about Benny, and we did, but he obviously thought he could make a bob or two out of us. The idea sounded good, and when we went home in the van, I remember us all talking about it, whether Benny would back it up or not. Although for some reason, the others said Benny's offer had something to do with coke, and that didn't guarantee whether or not it was the real thing.